Hey nerds, what's up? I'm so happy today to be joined by Preston Jacobs. You guys have been begging me to get Preston on ever since I finished reading the rest of George R. R. Martin's bibliography. They said, we got to hear the opinion of you and Preston again. So thank you for joining us today, Preston. If you want to introduce yourself and your channel.
Oh, no problem. My name is Preston Jacobs. I have a channel where I primarily talk about A Song of Ice and Fire and George's other works, though, I also talk about some other things in the world. I stream every Sunday. The conversations go to almost anything, but, whatever shows I happen to be watching and such stuff like that. But it tends to be analysis of A Song of Ice and Fire primarily. Yeah.
Yeah, and we last talked, I think it was like 2 years ago.
Has it been that long?
Yeah,
Jeez. Jeez. Some people
I
are like,
only
oh, your
know from
channel's been
hair length.
knocking down. We've been doing this channel for like 10, 11 years. I'm like, oh my God. Like,
Time is a lie. And yeah, that was very fun. It was kind of funny because like that was my first read through. You're a millionth. I don't know.
yeah,
So
I mean, things do change every time. I don't know. That's what's fun about it is that it's, George's work is very complicated and ambiguous so that they're going back, like second reads, third reads are always so interesting because you catch something else or you rethink something. Perhaps he thought about it, perhaps it's in your own head, but nonetheless it's great to go back and read it again.
100%. And like I think that's why it's going to be so fun to talk about his other work because so many people are really only familiar with A Song of Ice and Fire. And
Mhm.
so I think it's like a unique situation to be able to talk deeply about like his entire career.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I find it fascinating because he starts out as this very um uh I would say very bold, emotional sci-fi writer in the 70s. And then he transitions to writing a lot of horror and gets involved in Hollywood in the 80s. And then he switches to fantasy at A Song of Ice and Fire in the 90s. And there's his writing does change quite a bit. I mean, Hollywood changes his writing as well. And he gets better at some things, but he kind of loses the edge of the 70s a little bit as he goes on. Like there was something really bold and scrappy, bitter, chip on your shoulder kind of writing that he had in the 70s. That a little bit of that's lost over time.
I mean, it is funny you say that because I do think you see a lot of bitterness in his early work. Like that's such a good way to phrase it. I wonder if it's like as a person, he just evolved to become less bitter about some of those things in his life. And so they
I
weren't
think he get happier.
in the writing. Like if I don't usually like to like armchair therapist somebody. So I want to stay away from that. But like we do know things that were happening in his life. And
Yes.
sometimes I see it come out in the
Oh,
writing.
1,000%. One of your favorite stories is a second kind of loneliness,
Yes.
and I remember him writing about a second kind of loneliness in Dream Songs, and he says this was the first story he wrote where he wondered if he wanted people to read this and know about him, like he was frightened and scared that it was almost too vulnerable and too emotional. And I do love that because there's a lot of stories that are very, very honest and vulnerable from George. I think and so it's I that's why I kind of do like his 70s work a bit because he's so honest and yeah, you learn about his life and you're like, oh, right. Well, he was writing this story at this time after this bad breakup or this divorce, and you're like, oh, that explains things. But there's so much. The reason he's such a good writer, and they say, write what you know, but I think one of the reasons that he was such a great writer is that he does write what he knows and he's not scared to really put himself out there. He bleeds onto his page. So.
100%. And I also think like it's hard to really compare in some ways that early writing to now because he's only doing A Song of Ice and Fire. So it's like if he was releasing other stories, like there might be some of that edge still in it. Um,
Hmm.
and you know what? It's there's edge in A Song of Ice and Fire in a different way. I think it's just more high level. Whereas like those early 70s works, they're like, that's him. That's like
Oh yeah,
directly from here, you know?
it's very clear. Like obviously, yes, you can get some of his bitterness in Tyrion and some of his insecurity in Sam and some of his like fearful misogyny, like in Theon and stuff like that. But like, uh, when it's another character, I think you feel more open to write about them, versus like when it's just like protagonist I. Well, obviously, this is the stand-in for the author, like, and
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's sometimes more complicated than that. Like I've read, I don't know, have you done a bibliography read on any other authors?
of everybody, yes, I've done it with David Foster Wallace, where
Okay.
I've kind of like read through all of his works, and I did it when I was young with Vonnegut. Like I read through
Oh,
like a whole bunch of his work, like a whole bunch
that's a
of
great
works.
one.
Yeah, but even with great writers, and even with George, like you read one piece and you're one piece by them, and you're like, oh my god, this person's a genius, and they are geniuses, they are. But then you read like five stories, and you're like, okay, I understand. Like they're repeating themselves a little bit. Like
So I was
that's
going to say, with every bibliography read I've ever done with any author,
yeah,
you see the themes that come up again and again and again.
mm-hmm. Absolutely,
And some people dislike that. Like I've seen some people say like, "Oh, that means they're a one-trick pony." But for me, it's like we're human and the things we write, we might not even be aware that those are the things that are coming up again and again. It takes someone I think sometimes from the outside, and I think it's not necessarily a
yeah,
flaw. I think it's almost a boon. Like you can go to another like I know what I'm going to see in George's works now. Like I know the
yes.
things, you know?
But I also think about. I mean, I think about it with a lesser extent with human beings, like human beings and their minds. They're sort of like islands filled with resources. Some people are small islands. They're only worth a small conversation, and then you're done. And then some people are vast continents. But everybody's finite. Resources are finite. Like nobody has infinite genius. But some people are definitely continents. And so like George is a continent. There's a lot of themes. And I see him again, where I'm just like, okay, blended consciousness, yes, like existentialism in his early works, like um, his his unreligiousness, breakups, and feeling lonely. Like it's like
Mm.
you see it, but that's still a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff to talk about.
And they're emotions most people have. So I
Oh
think that it's easier to revisit those emotions over and over again. Um,
yeah, and which is the irony of it, right? Is that so much of George's works in the 70s are about his loneliness and him feeling alone, and yet we all read it and we know it because we felt alone, we felt lonely, and so it's an odd thing that like you're feeling communion with this person that feels alone, and it's like no, you're not alone. Like we all feel that too, but he
it's what
wouldn't,
all art does. It's kind of funny,
yeah,
right? Like art about being isolated and alone, and this is the only thing tends to bring people together, which is the great irony,
yes,
like you're
yes.
saying.
But there's so much pain. There's so much pain in his early works.
I mean, I think there's pain in all the works. I mean, who
Yeah,
hasn't read A Song of Ice and Fire and felt deep pain
I mean that's true. That's
through
true.
the entire thing? I think it's just, I mean, one of the most interesting things about A Song of Ice and Fire to me is that it's really his first work with so many perspectives. Like,
Mhm.
other than like Night Flyers, which I think
Mhm.
is what he credits as one of his first works with multiple perspectives, and then um, the unfinished, let's see if I can get the title right, Black and White
And read
and
all
Red
over.
all
Yeah.
over.
Yeah.
um, he really didn't do a lot with different perspectives, which I think is so interesting that his most known work is like so broad and so many perspectives.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think it's his first time writing it, but it's not his first time in that experience. When he was working on Wild Cards, he was only writing from one perspective. Usually he wrote, a turtle chapter, and but the other writers would write different perspectives in the same story, and he was the editor. So I mean, I suppose he was looking at it like that, maybe, that he needed wild cards to be thinking about multiple perspectives and multiple voices. Because if you are taking wild cards and it's a dozen authors, so it's definitely a dozen voices just by the nature of it being a dozen authors. And so he then has to mimic that, but doing it himself, which is very difficult.
Yeah, and I think probably TV. TV obviously is all over his A Song of Ice and Fire work, like writing scripts where you're writing from multiple different actors, I'm sure influenced it as well.
Yeah. Have you ever seen any of his Beauty and the Beast?
No, I have not watched. No, I haven't watched any of it. Should I?
No.
Okay. I feel like just how I generally feel about the scripts he did, don't feel like TV that I probably would generally watch. I don't watch a lot of TV anyway, so I'm just like not a good audience.
Who has the time? But yeah, no, he was showrunner on this show called Beauty and the Beast for 3 years.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I looked it up.
Yeah. It's even though it's a different time, it wasn't as exciting. It's not as well paced. So that's why I say like, nah, you're fine.
Yeah,
you're fine.
I figured.
Beauty and the Beast.
Some of those TVs are just for their time. I mean, I don't think I've watched any of his stuff, but I used to watch like the Twilight Zone and stuff. So I know, like, I'm familiar with some of the stuff that he would have written on. But I did want to start talking about his novels first, because there's so many short stories. And his first novel, Dying of the Light, I know that you like.
I do like it a lot. Yeah. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful ending. I mean, it definitely has flaws. It's got a lot of flaws, but I like Dying of the Light quite a bit. I think it's an interesting concept about breakups and the obligations that you feel to an ex, somebody that you care for and love, even though they hurt you, you still feel kind of obligated to them. Sometimes in the weird fantasies you have in your head, you're like, what happens if this like old ex reached out to me? Like, how would I act? And this story is that. And so there's a lot of interesting exploration there. And then he transitions it to philosophical discussions of existentialism and like what it means, like what is your essence and what is morality and stuff like that, which I think are some great strengths to the story. On the downside, it meanders and then has a breakneck ending where you're just all of a sudden like, oh, the story's over. It's a beautiful ending, but a lot of people would probably not like it because it ends on a cliffhanger. Yeah, like purposeful.
Yeah, I mean, I called it brilliant but unreadable, which is how I qualify things when I think thematically they're incredible, but just like the experience of reading them isn't that great. And I think you kind of touched on that. I didn't mind the ending. I actually am okay with a cliffhanger ending. Yeah, that was fine, but I think just the way the prose was and the way the story does have a weird pace, I had a hard time getting into it. But the overtures were amazing. You know what I mean? It's funny that you say you view it as kind of looking about a breakup, because I didn't think that way at all. So it's funny that we got such different thematic elements. Like you saying that, you're right. I don't know why I didn't see it that way. For me, it felt much more like a novel focusing on change, like how people change and what like cultural differences and like dealing with that was what I focused on. But you're not wrong. So I'm like, now I got to rethink it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, all that's there. I mean, I would say that Jan Vickery is a Rhaegar Targaryen character in there. Like, I think a lot is like in there about, people trying to change the world and being unable to change the world. And things like that. There's a lot of funny things. There's also a lot of funny things. Like there's an entire chapter where they just go to a restaurant and like eat food, and you're
unreadable.
there's an entire chapter where he's just like staring at his hand, talking about like the weirdness of existence. And there's a lot of, and there's a funny chapter where, I mean, not funny, but there's an exciting chapter where he's stripped naked and is hunted. But then the distances are all just completely wrong. Like it takes him all day to walk 1 mile. And you're like, what are you doing, George? Like,
well, wasn't it like in a jungle? I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah, it's funny because I do think some of his character work starts there. Like Jan, I loved Jan. Like I was so all in on some of the characters there. It's interesting to see. I mean, in some ways, it's a crazy first novel in a lot of ways. But Absolutely. It's cool when you do that to see how his craft evolved, because he really got so much better at making the theme and plot and characters all kind of harmonize. Yes. Where I think they're a little unbalanced in Dying of the Light.
I mean, he's taking all of these like sci-fi things and hippie things like to such an extreme, and then plopping them all in this one setting which is only like novella length. Like you're just like, oh right, well it takes place on a festival world where the festival has actually been over for years because it's moving away from a sun, and so everything is dying. And then it's about like space hunters and a guy trying to reform that space hunting society, but also it's polyamorous, and his girlfriend is in a polyamorous relationship, but they made a special like bond with a whisper jewel where they promised to be together, and he received a psychic message from her whisper jewel and has to show up, and then gets into like a problem where he's insulting this hunter species, and you're like, it's so much at once you think about it. Like, oh God.
It's a lot to hang on like 350 pages.
Right. But it's also,
but it's funny though, because like broadly, Dying of the Light, even as a title, I feel like can describe a lot of thematic elements in all of his work, including A Song of Ice and Fire, right?
Oh,
like
absolutely.
The sunset of a world, that's just everywhere in his work. And to see it so like literal in his first novel is very interesting.
Right, like the death of the giants in the poem that Tormund sings, like, oh, when the giants are gone, the silence will go on. Like there's just all of that kind of feeling of like of the dying world, and like this feeling of this melancholy of things dying, and his and how people react to it, like. People rage against it. People try not to die and do crazy things in that situation. It's not lethargic. Like the melancholy doesn't lead to people being lethargic. It leads to craziness. So
yeah, and you see it again, like in A Song for Laia. There's like stuff in there, and there's stuff in the whole idea of winter in A Song of Ice and Fire is very Dying of the Light as well.
Oh, yeah. The world is dying. Yeah.
So much of it. I think it's a great first novel, but like I said, I understand why people would love it, but also it's just really tough for me.
It's a really great first draft.
yeah, and I think we see the rest of it. I'm trying to think,
right.
What's the next one? Is it Windhaven that comes next, or Fever Dream?
I think so. Windhaven, he wrote Windhaven is kind of a patch up, because it was 3 short stories that they eventually put together.
Yeah, and like it was 1 and then 2, and then they wrote the third one, I think, much later than the first 2, if I recall correctly.
So I'm trying to think which one it is. That before Fever Dream? It probably would be. Yeah, Fever Dream is 82. You're right. Windhaven is next. Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was. And so he co-wrote that with Lisa Tuttle. How did you feel about Windhaven?
It's interesting because it's George's writing style completely. Like it's very clear that he's the dominant one editing, but it's so much more hopeful novel where I'm just like, well, that's not George. It's so.
I don't know. I actually think the ending is quite melancholy of all 3. Yeah. Not the first one, but of Windhaven as a novel, not a novella. I actually think the ending is quite melancholy. I think that part always felt like George to me, because it's never 100% triumphant other than that first novella, which I think, am I remembering wrong? I think it originally didn't have as nice of an ending. And then either Lisa or someone else was like, no, it's got to be happier.
Probably.
I
I don't
think that's
know.
the one.
I've never read the stories independently. I've only read them together because you're
Me
right that
too.
they might have been published originally differently.
I think they were because I think the
Yeah.
first one, the first novella won the Hugo or
Hmm.
the Nebula, one of them, the Hugo.
Yeah.
I think so. And then they wrote the second one, and then I think they wrote the third one to bind it up. So
Okay.
if I
Okay.
recall correctly, um, so I thought
The-
the ending of it melancholy. I guess we can't spoil the ending. It's a little
yeah, I suppose
melancholy.
not. But it's like a fast forward um, to give it that. I think he ends Fever Dream kind of the same way, where there's a fast forward,
Yes,
where
I
yes, the
actually feel those
world,
endings have
yeah,
similar melancholy. Actually,
yeah, like the world is doing great thanks to these people, but they're, you know,
they had to give something up.
yeah, exactly. So the Windhaven's super interesting because there's so many Ice and Fire references in it, like the Erie and Sorella and all these things in there. I think it's a neat concept. The theme is about meritocracy versus things being hereditary. So and the benefits of meritocracy. And I imagine someone like George and Lisa Tuttle, who probably consider themselves great people, would be fans of meritocracy. So and this world transitioning. It's interesting that they're it's a as they say, like an interregnum world or a regressed technology world, which comes up all over the place. But it's a cute, nice. I don't know, cute, but it's a nice
I was about
story.
like cute, saying
Um,
calling it cute is fighting words for me. I gave this like 5 stars. This is one of my favorite novels of all time.
okay. It's
That's where
nice.
I'm
It's a very
coming
nice.
from.
Yeah,
You can't
it's
call it
it's
cute. You can offend it in any other way. You just can't call it cute.
okay. All right, I take it back. But yeah, it's very nice. But I think it's George's. I think it's George's writing infused with Lisa Tuttle's like hopefulness. I
Have you
think it.
read any other of Lisa Tuttle's work? Because I haven't, and I need to, because it's hard for me to see her influences. Because to me, it's such a George book. Like I have a
Right.
hard time knowing when it's her because I haven't read her.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've read some of her stuff. It's not that her writing style is that different from George, but they do tend to be, she writes more on feminist themes. She wrote a book called the Encyclopedia of Feminism, and so
Okay.
that's why this is like a very important like story in that respect. That Maris is this strong female character, like vying for a meritocracy. And so the big thing I'm when I read the book, I'm always thinking, oh God, this is one of the women that broke George's heart. Like that's the thing that really like I'm like he spent how much time with her like writing after like their relationship didn't work out or whatever, and he wrote all these other stories um, about their relationship not working out, and yet so that that always sticks with me. I'm like, how did he sit down with his ex and write a book?
And so maybe it helped that I didn't know they were exes when I read Windhaven.
Oh, mm.
Because I do generally like to read work without knowing a lot about their lives
Yeah,
first. And now I know because I loved it so much. I was going into it and I was like, oh, that is awkward.
yeah,
So it was
right.
after. But I think there's a lot thematically there. And I think the reason it's sometimes hard for me to see Lisa in it, even though I haven't read her yet, I need to, is that Maris feels very much like a George female protagonist to me
She does
because
too. You're right. Yeah.
just the way that she is written feels very like the other female characters that I love that he has written. And I think it's interesting because you're right. It is about someone trying to make a meritocracy. I can never say that word. Whatever.
Maritime.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Based on skill. But I think there's a lot of pushback within the novel that Maris is really only doing it for herself.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? And I think that's a very interesting push and pull. It's like what I love about George's characters, which is like you can root for them and they can be doing noble things, but there's also a selfishness to her. And I do
Mm-hmm.
think that crops up in a lot of his work in a way that I find very satisfying, because he never really writes the hero that's just a hero. And I don't think he ever has. And I think that's so underrated in his work and why it lasts for so
Right,
long.
right. I mean, it's strange that today, when you hear people criticize or critique any book or movie, they're always talking about, on the one hand, they want a protagonist they can relate to, but on the other hand, they 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 don't want a protagonist that is unlikable, you know. And the thing is like, a lot of us like have a love. I mean, all of us have a love-hate relationship with ourselves, right? So you can like make somebody very real, so real that you start hating them, you know, because you can see parts of yourself in them. Um, and so, yeah, I don't, you know, Maris definitely has a chip on her shoulder, and she's definitely like bossy and loud and keeps going and is tenacious uh, and so yeah, she's she's not a perfect character by any means, but you know, she's the character that world needs, definitely.
You definitely bring up a good point, because for two things you said, because George is very good at writing a true thing, which is often our best qualities are also our worst qualities. So
Mm-hmm.
like Maris's best qualities and why people need her also sometimes turn into her worst parts. And I think we see
Yes.
that all over his work, and it's very true. But also people who don't want unlikable protagonists, I think scares people, writers, and they end up writing too perfect of characters that aren't good. This, in my opinion, happens a lot to female characters. I always sense a
Mm-hmm.
fear in writers that like, if I don't make my female character strong, then she's not good. And it's like they totally miss the point
Right, right.
on what even makes a good or interesting person, and it's generally flaws. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so in the fandom. Of Ice and Fire. There's of course like a massive amount of cat hate and Sansa hate, and
of course.
obviously most of it's sexism. But you know, but people bring up like all of their flaws and all the things they did wrong, and you're like, yeah, because they're human beings. Of course, they're gonna have things that they did wrong. Of course, they're gonna have flaws. Like that's the point, because if you don't have any flaws, then everybody, you know, complains that this is some sort of Mary Sue or
Or
something.
even if, or they're just uninteresting. Like
Yeah.
they're just
Cool.
not interesting to read. It's
Yes.
funny in A Song of Ice and Fire, because you have like Tyrion, and to be clear, I love Tyrion. I
Mm.
love Tyrion. But talk about a flawed person. Like,
Oh,
don't
of
you know what I
course.
mean?
I mean, I mean, of course, and he's had so much trauma in his life that there's no way he could not be a flawed person and fundamentally broken. Like it's, you know, it's to the point with Tyrion where you're like, oh my gosh, like is he salvageable? But then you're like,
Yeah.
you see so much of yourself in him, and you're like, oh God, does that mean I'm like I myself am not
I mean,
salvageable?
I don't
These
want to
questions
spoil
are
anything. I
asked.
think you and I can say that we haven't done some of the things Tyrion has done.
Well, yes, I've never murdered anybody or killed my
We're marked
father,
safe.
or yes, yeah.
But no, I totally agree with you. You do see that. So that's fine.
But I've never
I
been through
think
the trauma that Tyrion has gone through either. So, you know.
yes. I think your opinion on Windhaven is probably what's generally based on Goodreads, the general opinion.
Mm,
You know, we all have that book that we'll just go to bat
yeah,
for,
yeah.
and that's Windhaven for me. It was actually the first book of his I read after A Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh, okay.
So, or
Yeah.
that wasn't, I should say, A Song of Ice and Fire. So that's always funny to me. Next up, we have Fever Dream, which I do think you like, right?
I like Fever Dream a lot for a lot, mainly for the reason that you're discussing, that the character of Sour Billy is
Oh,
so incredible. He's so incredibly dark and insecure and vicious, and you're just like, and fearfully we all, you know, see a little like the darkest side of ourselves in Sour Billy. He's a horrible, horrible human being, and I think that I don't know if George has ever written a character as good as Sour Billy. I think he might be the best character that he's ever
that is
written.
an insane take.
Yeah.
But I love that for you. Tell me more.
Oh, so I also do love the theme of like Sour Billy is of course this poor white trash character that wants to be a vampire. And this is, of course, a metaphor for the poor white trash person that wants to be a gentlemanly upper class person. And he really thinks that if he jumps through all the hoops and he abides by the orders of these vampires, that they're going to make him a vampire. But the thing is like in this, spoiler, you can't be a vampire in the book. Like it's not a bite become a vampire like working system. And so like the pathetic like desire, like, oh, I want to be, and the bitterness of like, I want to be rich. I want to be that upper class. I want to be a gentleman. And him being just this like pathetic um, guy who'll just do anything and to get there, and is racist because like he thinks it makes him better than black people, and that he can somehow rise up. It's it is a perfect metaphor for much of America, where you have a whole bunch of disadvantaged people that are incredibly racist because it makes them feel better about who they are, who aspire to be billionaires and will sit there and go to bat for billionaires, thinking that they're going to be a billionaire one day. And it's like, you're never going to be a billionaire, man. Like, stop. Like, and that's Sour Billy. And that's why I love him so much. He's so dark and so horrible. And I will say that at the climax of the story, when you think Sour Billy is dead, and then you get another Sour Billy POV chapter, I was just like, oh my God. Like, for a moment, and this was the brilliance of that book, for a moment I was like, oh my God, is he going to become a vampire? Wait, is it actually like possible that he's going to become a vampire? For that moment. And then you're like, oh shit, I just fell for Sour Billy's thing. For a moment, I was Sour Billy. Like, you've been told it's impossible to become a vampire. But then just for a moment, you're like, but maybe there's a chance. You're like, no.
I never thought of that metaphor for Sour Billy in those terms. I think it's a really good point. I never thought he was going to be a vampire. I was just annoyed he was still alive. I was like, so in. I actually legitimately, when you said one of his best characters, I thought you were going to say Abner Marsh, because for me, Abner Marsh is such a weird main character for a novel like Fever Dream, and I just loved it.
He is weird and zany. I feel like it's just George R. Martin though. Like, I'm just like, that's just George. Because he looks like George. I'm not giving
him enough credit. I don't feel like it is a self-insert. I think what is, because otherwise we'd see Abner too much. And I think he's different from almost any other character George has written, in that I always think it's interesting when authors can write very charismatic characters without the typical charismatic traits. Mm-hmm. Because when I was reading it, I couldn't help but just be like, I would want to be friends with Abner Marsh. Like, this is a loyal person. This is a person who sticks to his guns, and it's slowly, because at first when you meet him, you're like, who is this dude who's like obsessed with steamboats? I know way too much about steamboats now. Read Fever Dream if you want to know about steamboats. And just how his relationship develops. And I also just love a good friendship. This is a story about unique friendships too.
Good bromance in that one. Yeah.
Good bromance. And I don't think there's enough friendship tales. And I certainly don't think there's enough like really good male friendship tales. And that's what stuck out to me the most about Fever Dream, is just like what a weird vampire novel it is. Not like I'm so well read in vampire novels, but generally they go very differently. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. And I do appreciate like the thematic element of it, in that, vampires are this stand-in for race relations in America, and Abner Marsh his, his transition to the end of the book is following America's transition. Like at the beginning, like he's just like, well, he's more of a manumissionist. Like slavery's there, but he doesn't really care about outlawing it. He's just like, he's going to be nice to the black people he knows, and he's going to mind his own business. And then by the end of the story, he's like, no, slavery is wrong. Like and I do love that he makes that transition, and he makes it through like understanding the vampire metaphor of it all and everything. So,
yeah. And there's also a lot of like thematic elements of choice versus birth, which I think goes into that, which you see a lot. I mean, I think that was a lot on Windhaven too, in a very different way. That's interesting.
Some people criticize George for not writing enough about race, and I'm like, he wrote an entire novel about it. like Fever Dream is a whole novel about it. Like it's
which books have they criticized for that? Like A Song of Ice and Fire?
I think A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, oh, he doesn't write that much about race, and it's like he wrote. I mean, Night Flyers is about race too, but like he wrote an entire book about it. He wrote an entire book about like slavery and racism, why people are racist, and
what are the criticisms coming for A Song of Ice and Fire though? Like in what way? Like what relations do they feel like don't delve into that sort of thing, just in general?
I think when I've heard the criticism, and it's like, well, when we go to Essos, George plays into all of the foreigner tropes that are there. Ululating Dothraki savages, the Slaver's Bay with their eating dogs and loving pit fighting and things like this. Every place they go, every place where she meets brown-skinned foreign people, they're savages. I think people that read that are missing the point, because each of the societies you see, once you see it, you're like, oh, that's actually the exact thing as Westeros, but he's purposely making them seem savage as a statement about Westeros. So like when the white person sees the brown savage, he's calling himself savage ironically, because but he's too stupid to like recognize that. Like, I think that's what George is saying with that. But I think that's the criticism people have, is that when people go around Essos, it's just savage culture after savage culture after savage culture.
Oh, that's so interesting, because I don't actually see the Dothraki as savage. But I think it's also because George, he writes from a perspective. So we only ever see that through Dany's eyes, right? So you're never going to really get an unmitigated. Actually, they should just read Dying of the Light, because I actually feel like Dying of the Light deals with a lot of that. Because like our main character feels like these other people are so savage, but through the course of the novel, you realize it's just like totally different cultural, and that a lot of things he does is considered savage to them.
Yeah. Which reminds me of how much I love the reveal of, at the end of Dying of the Light, of Breton Braith's, like why he was hunting him. And it's a very beautiful line. I don't know if I want to spoil it, but
don't spoil it. Okay. I feel like too many people won't have read it, and so they need to be convinced. But I know exactly what you're talking about, though.
He's getting hunted by this guy, Breton Braith, who looks like the Hound. He has half of his face burned, and you think he's getting hunted for one reason, and then at the end, you're like, oh, of course. Oh, fuck.
Best part of the whole novel.
Yeah. It is.
It almost made me increase its score, but not quite.
It's a tearjerker scene.
Fantastic. Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that was a criticism, because I'm not really deep in that. So that's interesting. And then his last novel before A Song of Ice and Fire, official novel, was Armageddon Rag.
That's right.
Which, how did you feel about Armageddon Rag?
I think it's a big miss. I think it's a big miss for. I think the primary reason, and what's interesting about the book, is that like growing up, I was really into punk rock, and I was really into music, and I was really into Lord of the Rings. Like if anyone should understand this book and where George is coming from, it would be me. But it's so specific, and so I think George's problem is that he was feeling that the music that he listened to growing up defined the entire generation. And I don't think, one, he was accurate in saying that, because I think people have very diverse music tastes. And so when you're sitting there being like, oh yeah, we used to sit around singing Peter, Paul, and Mary. It's like, yeah, lots of people love Peter, Paul, and Mary, but a lot of people listen to different music. And then once you go beyond that generation, yeah, no one cares about Peter, Paul, and Mary. I'm sorry. Like,
First of all, I love Peter, Paul, and Mary. So I grew up listening to Peter, Paul, and Mary. So it's not all of us, but you're right. Like most people don't know. I try to force my kids to listen to Lemon Tree and they don't care. So yeah, I think it was similar. Like I am not a person like super connected to music. So for me, that wasn't a boon of the novel. I think oddly, because you said Windhaven was too, I think Armageddon Rag ended too happy. Like it bothered me. It felt like the ending was so overly sweet
yes,
that it didn't make sense to me for the rest of his work.
It also ends incredibly fast, like Dying of the Light. Well, Fever Dream also ends incredibly fast, but which I don't think very like bodes well for A Song of Ice and Fire.
I think it bodes very well. It means that two novels could wrap it up.
Oh, in that respect, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. But you're kind of going along in this book, and then all of a sudden it's over, right? That's Dying of the Light. That's Fever Dream. And that is also Armageddon Rag. And nothing's really explained, like where the prophecies are coming from.
It doesn't bother me. Whatever. It's magic.
Yeah, it's magic. It's all the ghosts of Janis Joplin appear, and it's all there. I mean, I understand his metaphor about what consciousness is. Like, is consciousness a ghost? Is consciousness what people remember? You've never seen the show, but Game of Thrones, but the show ends with Tyrion being like, "Nothing beats a great story," and that's what'll stop death. Like, nothing beats a great story. Like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, when we're remembered, it's Star Trek 2. Like, as long as you remember Spock, he continues to live forever. That's Armageddon Rag too, right? Like, oh, as long as we remember the music, like it's like they're ghosts and they'll live forever. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so. and it just doesn't. For me, it was also just too steeped in nostalgia, in a way that doesn't feel accessible. Mm-hmm. I think nostalgia. I don't mean like the cheap nostalgia we're getting now. It wasn't like that, but it veered into that territory. Where it was like, I read it and thought, well, maybe it's just because I'm too young. But then it's like, people didn't like it at the time either. So like, I just don't think it was nostalgia that worked.
And I kind of feel like it has to be very specific. Like, it is true that there was a folksy hippie group of people that were also into Lord of the Rings and stuff like that in the late 60s, early 70s. That's fine. And then but he's writing about this in 83. Who's the audience? It's a very specific audience and because he's writing what he knows. He's writing the music he loves. His favorite musician is Chris Christopherson, and he's going to keep writing about Chris Christopherson. But but not everybody's into Chris Christopherson. Chris Christopherson, who was big, he's one of those people that isn't remembered as much as other musicians of that time period. He's now known more for his acting than he is for his music, even though his music's really good. But like, you compare him to, say, Johnny Cash, mm-hmm. People remember Johnny Cash, but they don't remember Chris Christopherson as well. So,
I don't care about steamboats, and yet I love Fever Dream. Like, I think there is a way for an author to bring you into things that you don't relate to or care about, and make it work. But
yeah,
for whatever reason, it didn't. Like, I don't think, like, I've met so few people who really love Armageddon Rag that it's like, whatever. I'm not a writer, so I don't know what that magic pill is that threads the needle. But I think you're right. In the end, it ended up feeling too specific, even though I think mm-hmm. sometimes that can work. It didn't,
Which is odd, because it's also like, I just went into how weird and odd Dying of the Light was as a setting. And it's like, why don't we choose more realistic settings? Why don't we consider more realistic settings as foreign and interesting and exotic? Like, why didn't I want to read about this? A music journalist who is interviewing a punk band based on a resurrected punk band, and he goes through remembering his hippie music. Like, why doesn't that connect to me in the same way as going to a festival, the dying festival planet on the edge of the galaxy? I don't know. But yeah, it's for some reason just didn't connect,
Yeah, and
So
a lot of people have that. So I can't figure out why it is. But I do think some of it is that I think that book has more overt talking about its own themes. Like the journalist would constantly just say things like, "Well, I guess that's why XYZ." And I
yeah, and
think
all the other characters would know what he's talking about. Like all the other characters got his references,
yeah.
which is also kind of weird, you know, because I can tell you about music in the '90s, and you would probably be like, I don't know what you're saying, like you know,
Yeah, and I listen to my own 90s stuff, you know what I mean?
sure,
Like
you know, like you
but
know,
it shouldn't matter is what I'm saying. Like it shouldn't
right.
matter because like you just said, we
If
can
it's
go to
done
this
well,
festival world on a dying planet and some of the other stuff that we've loved, you know, A Song for Laia has
yeah,
all sorts of goofy, wacky things. But for some reason I feel like Armageddon Rag didn't hit the right emotional beats to
yeah,
connect with its audience. I guess that's just ultimately what it was.
yeah. And you know what? The protagonist just kind of felt when you know when we're talking about Abner Marsh and Sour Billy and how colorful both characters are. Um, the protagonist of Armageddon Rag just didn't feel colorful.
No. They're very unmemorable. Like
Yeah,
it's hard for me to even say what a character trait
right. Like with
of
Dying
they
of the Lead, I
were.
can at least be like, well, Dirk is a heartbroken sad sack. You know, like at least there's
Yes.
that about him. What can you say? Like the one thing that you could say about the emotional state of the protagonist of Armageddon Rag, who I can't even I can't even remember his name. Like
Me neither. I'm so glad you said that because it's like I read that one because I read them in, well, no, but I read that one later than the other ones. And I can remember so many details about the other book. And
yeah,
Armageddon Rag, I'm just like, what's the main character's name? I don't know.
right. I mean, I vaguely remember that there's an albino. And,
I
like,
just, the only thing I really remember is that like I would wear a Nazgul band t shirt. Like the
hmm.
concept of that is great. I need someone to design that. But that was like the first two chapters, I was all into it. I was like, oh yeah, a metal
Yeah,
band based on the Nazgul. Like great. And then after two chapters, it was like straight downhill. You
yeah.
know, great concept. I guess I think it's just execution.
There's also a funny thing about Armageddon Rag in that one of the things that I think is very funny about Lord of the Rings is that all of a sudden an entire page will be dedicated to people singing, and it's honestly my least favorite part of Lord of the Rings. Like I'm
No,
just like this
incorrect.
doesn't.
People are so wrong. People hate the singing. It's a part of it.
I know. I understand, but like they purposely didn't put that in the movie and all sorts of stuff. The same. He does the same thing in Armageddon Rag as a point. Like he's trying to make it like Lord of the Rings, so he puts in these like them singing songs, but it's like I have no melody to know what this sounds. You're just singing lyrics. You're just saying. So
I think like because I am a defender of the Lord of the Rings songs, but I
hmm,
similarly did not like them in here. And I think it is because like when it's in Lord of the Rings, you're like, it's a folksy song and it's like
right.
whatever, but like I want to know what a metal song sounds like. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's very different. One's more like poetry, and I totally agree. You're like, these have no meaning to me. I can't really hear the song. I don't
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Maybe someone should try to record them. But can you imagine? I think it's interesting that he said that critics loved Armageddon Rag. That's
Huh.
so interesting to me. And then it was a commercial failure. There's
I'm like,
probably
which,
some stuff to be said
but
there
does he
about
mean
what critics
critics
look
as in two
for.
of them, or
What?
does he mean critics as in two people? Critics?
Well, he said that all of his editors and everything thought it was going to sell very well in Dream Songs, you
Hmm.
know, and that the early critical reception was really high. I don't know if it's changed now. I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
go, you know, look it up. And honestly, the art of like the actual book critic is dying quite a bit.
Sure. Absolutely.
I mean, it's not really there. It's us, which like
Mhm.
we could discuss all day about like the negatives and positives of like an actual critic dying. But at the time, I feel like it was still very critic focused. So
Right. I mean, there's so many things in there. Like, oh, he's a music journalist. You're like, well, those don't exist either. Like everything is like,
not anymore.
right.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad we both agree on that one. I have a hard time understanding people who love that one. Whereas like loving Dying of the Light, I get it. Like I actually can get it. But yeah, not that one. Um, so before we filmed, for everyone else out there, me and Preston exchanged our 5 favorite and least favorite of George's short stories. because there's just too many for us to
Yes.
really talk about. So we only shared one in the two lists, like in our five favorites and five favorites. There was only one that crossed over. I guess positively. We did
Yeah.
have one crossover in your favorites and in my least favorite.
Yes.
Or is there two? Or is it only one? Wait, let me look at this. Oh, it's
I
two.
like all of
Okay.
your
Oh, this is good. This is
all
good.
of your
Okay.
favorites, I think, are great choices. But is the crossover? It's Sand Kings, right?
It's Sand Kings. Yeah, which deserves to be on both of our lists. It was my number one, and I think it's your number three.
Yeah. I do love Sand Kings. I mean, the first time I read it, I didn't like it that much. I don't think I understood it the first time I read it. And then the second time through, it connected with me more. I love just like, one, it's take away all the themes. It's a really fun horror movie, horror story where
100%.
There's really incredible descriptions and the main character is insane and fun because he's so insane and crazy and horrible in a similar sense of say like why Victorian Greyjoy chapters are so fun because the person's just bonkers, right?
Or even Circe, like that. Like Circe is one of my favorite POVs because you just what's going to happen? You don't know.
Right. You're just like, what bad decision is she going to make? So, but that's how Simon Crest came off. And then once you get into the okay, what do the Sand Kings represent? What does Simon represent? And it's not exactly subtle. I mean, they tell you at the end of the story that like he is God, and the Sand Kings represent civilization. And there's interesting aspects to it, and then you can kind of read into what the ending means and what the different colored factions mean. My interpretation of it was religion and God is very important to inspire early society, and that eventually societies should move beyond the religion. But in the case of, it's literally the whites, the white society, Western society, they've now decided to use God for themselves, for their own like weird corrupt ends, which is what happened. Like because Simon is taken over telepathically by the white maw. And I thought that was a very interesting kind of idea, like criticism of Western society. And keep in mind, like when it's written, the Chinese and the Soviets are like abandoning religion, right? And so he has a red faction and a black faction in his story. And I think the orange faction probably represents the third world, lesser developed countries or something. And that I think this is the statement he's making, that George feels like society, through its normal development, and you read most sci-fi at the time, like everybody's pretty secular in the future. But his strange statement that like we're not on that path, like that Western society is actually not on the normal path, and that people are using religion rather than religion, like at the beginning of the story, like they build and they advance for the worship of God, but then it switches, and God becomes a tool of man. Is how I feel that the interpretation. That's what I.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't interpret it as black and white. I definitely, obviously, it's very religious. Like it's one of his most interesting, I think, religious discussions. I saw it much more fluid. Like I think your reading of it is definitely could be in there. I think it's interesting that he contrasted. I forget the woman's name who sells him the bugs,
Woe and Shade. Woe.
Yeah. Because her civilization thrives under her godhood, and nothing happens there. And then we have this other god who, breaks bad because of his lack of benevolence and his complex of wanting entertainment. And so it also seemed like maybe an exploration of just how different religions see God is. I mean, that's a constant discussion in religion. Like, is it a benevolent God? Is it the God of the Old Testament? That's like a vengeful, spiteful God. And what does that mean? That was the lens I read a lot of it through. Like, and even if you take away the religious undertones, even just like leadership and politics, I think there's a lot that you could kind of see in there. So like, I definitely see your read of it, and I think there's
I
other
see what you're
reads.
saying. Like, I remember that when the Orange faction portray him as a sort of goofy god, he's like insulted. But like when the Whites like see him as this like fierce, vengeful like god, they act in a certain way. You know, I mean, I
Yeah, like
definitely see it.
making
Yeah.
your how people reflect your countenance back at you and how your
Mm.
actions have changed that also like is another theme that, as we've said, is in his work a lot, like just self-esteem and view of the self. And I think there's a lot there with Simon and like how his treatment of the bugs and how the different factions, as you said, view him differently
Yeah.
based on that. Like, and like what you said, I also just highly enjoyed it as a horror story without any of that.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah, it's really his best in his early work of writing that insane protagonist, which is gonna, you know, be incredible
follow
for
us.
him later on when he's writing like a Cersei and Victorian. Yeah,
Yeah.
is this is the first time he really like explores that. Yeah.
And Sand Kings will be important for our discussion later because it is horror, but it's very psychological horror.
Mm.
And we'll be talking a lot more of his body horror later,
Oh
and maybe there'll be a
yeah.
theme on how I feel about body horror. Um, but so that was my number one favorite. But your number one favorite was the glass flower, and
Yes.
I'd love to hear why you love that one because for me it was neither good nor bad. It fell right kind of in the middle of my rankings.
The glass flower. Yeah, glass flower is. I believe it's the greatest thing I've ever read by him. I love it that much.
That's okay.
It's a beautiful
Should I call
story.
it cute? Because that's what you
It's
call
quite cute.
Windhaven?
It's a cute story. There's the cute little battle at the end where they're
There
doing
is.
the mind swapping and all of that. Um, what I love about George, one of his go-to sci-fi topics is consciousness and blended consciousness. What is consciousness?
Mhm.
Are we just memories, or is there something more? And so, is there something that somebody would call a soul or consciousness on top of these memories? And how do you explain that? And Glass Flower is a brilliant exploration that it goes even a step beyond that. That there's something else, that consciousness in the human experience relies on forgetting and dying. And without those two things, fundamentally, the human experience isn't there. And so, what I love about this, it's about a person's memories who get uploaded into a cyborg. And you'd think, oh, the person gets to live forever as a cyborg. Well, hold on a second. If your brain were really like a cyborg, like little things, like the fact that we have dim memories of being four, or the fact that like when you're with your children, you get a little feeling of something being familiar, like way in your past that you can't quite put a finger on, or you suddenly remember something. You're like, oh, right, when I was 6, this and this happened to me. You have a certain smell that evokes something strange. That wouldn't exist in anyone that uploaded their brain into a computer. You would have absolute recall of everything. And so these little things like a piece of trauma, a bad breakup, an embarrassment when you're 12, those would no longer stick out like they do as thorns in the rest of us. They'd just be one memory among every other memory of you going to the bathroom when you were 17. Like they would be equal. And the idea that like you need forgetfulness, you need to have your memories die in order to have the human experience. That even an android, even the cyborg, craves that. He craves that feeling of becoming a human. And meanwhile, Cyrene, she's a horribly flawed, horrible person. Like she wants immortality, and how like in his prose after they do the switch, his prose changes to her saying things like, I think she says something like, she sees a dragonfly and her eyes telescope in to observe it, and you're like, oh God, like like the beauty of her is disappearing as she's becoming more like a computer. And the meta, and so we have this metaphor of the glass flower. Like, yes, the glass flower will last forever, but it has no, as they say, no pollen or scent, like comes from it. There's no beauty. There's no essence to it. I think it's the whole thing is written beautifully. I think it came out in '89. It's one of his later stories. It's I think it's the height of his exploration of what consciousness is on a sci-fi level. It's very mind-bending because you sit there being like, but what is consciousness? Like, you're sitting there going, well, what am I? What am I on this like fundamental level? You're tying yourself in knots, wondering what we are. And meanwhile, his prose is height, like Catelyn Stark level beauty of prose. And it's just really also very sad and melancholy, but also there's this big battle. There's this big mind swapping battle, which is like fun as fuck. So like, that's why I'm just like, it's very Ice and Fire if you think about it, because there's all this like action and adventure that's really fun. Like the plot of the story is that people are having a mind swapping battle to swap consciousness from different bodies, and you're like, well, what's going to happen in that? And then also this just very deep philosophical and sci-fi explanation of what consciousness is, and just beautiful writing. So that's my pitch for Glass Flower.
Yeah, maybe I need to reread it again. You make me want to like it. I love everything you said about it. It's like maybe if I had gotten that. It's funny though, because hearing you talk is like all those things you said is what I got out of For a Single Yesterday, which is my fifth favorite. So I feel like maybe just two different of his stories had that same effect. Because like for me, I thought deeply about memory and consciousness and what it means to remember and forget in For a Single Yesterday.
Yeah.
So I wonder if I reread The Glass Flower and connect it to those emotions, if I would feel differently about it.
Yeah. It's, but I do think that, these interpretations can also reflect on like people's faith quite a bit. Fundamentally, if you believe in souls, like it's a different question versus like somebody that doesn't necessarily believe in souls, and things like that.
Well, and that's why short stories I think are so underrated in terms of authors, because it also is a lot of like our life experience that we bring to it. Like you're going to read things very differently. Like I always say, because I'm, as you know, a huge Catelyn Stark defender, but I always say like I read Catelyn Stark in my 30s when I had children. And I'm not sure me reading Catelyn Stark at like 18, let's say, that I would feel near as charitable to her. So I do think it's funny. Any of a short story could hit you very differently depending on what you're thinking about at any given moment in time.
Absolutely, and where you are in your life and things like that. It's I mean, I also, beyond that as well. It's the last story in the Thousand Worlds universe, and it does also toss around a lot of the Thousand Worlds lore that was in the background that you never understood, that he finally explains. Like, who the fuck was Chloronimus? Oh, now we know. Who was Peter Northstar? Like, it's just all this stuff. Who were Tomo and Wahlberg? Like, it's these little things that are peppered through the rest of the Thousand Worlds that he finally like explains. Like, no, this was the universe that we were in, and now I'll never write about it again. So,
Well, never say never. I mean, we can probably say never.
He's trying to write Avalon, right? But
yeah, and it's also interesting how that's a short story, and how we talked about too much was hung on Dying of the Light, but you just talked a lot about what was hung on the glass flower, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like, there was a lot of disparate stuff there that still really worked for you.
Yeah, and you're right that had it been longer, maybe it would have been different. Like had somebody drawn it out. But I think that George R. Martin is a phenomenal short story writer because he's so good at beginnings and he's so good at endings. And it's when his chapters that he writes like short stories tend to be very strong versus I mean, not that he doesn't have strong chapters, but I think he writes different types of chapters. There's chapters where he's just writing and then he chops them up, and then there's chapters where he's thinking about it as a short story, and it begins and concludes in a very similar fashion, and there's closure to it. Anyway, I think he's a short story writer still, like in his heart. So.
I see it. I mean, and you also see like people, I know it's fantasy, but like after reading all of his short stories that are horror and sci-fi as well, I see so much of that influence in A Song of Ice and Fire. It's like, yes, A Song of Ice and Fire fantasy, but like he borrows so much from horror and sci-fi when you really step back.
I mean, he has an essay that's famous in the fandom called The Furniture Rules.
Oh, I love this. Yeah. It's all furniture. If you're writing a high fantasy, it's set in. I love that quote. I wrote it. I wrote it down.
Yeah, I mean, he makes the point that like when people talk about like aura and mana and building it up like as some sort of like energy, that's really a sci-fi concept. And while time travel is the most fantastical concept, so why is time travel stories sci-fi? But people like building up aura and as like a magic is fantasy. Like that's
furniture.
Like, yeah. Exactly.
All of it. Wow, time is flying by. I want to talk about I want to talk about Song for Laia for sure, because that's your second favorite. Sure. It does not make my list, although I did like it. It wasn't that I disliked it, but I think that's one of the most famous short stories in the fandom other than Sand Kings.
It is. I mean, Song for Laia, which Lyanna Stark is named after, and Rob is the protagonist of the story. It takes there is a somewhat famous thought experiment of like, if there were a machine, a box that you could walk into and you would be happy and you would live forever. You would live forever and be happy forever. Would you walk into that box? And there's something odd about the thought experiment because at the same time when put like that, it's kind of creepy. Like, I don't know if I'd walk into that box, right? But of course, like it's just describing the idea of afterlife in most religions, right? That afterlife is a place that you're going to be happy forever, right? And so what's bold about A Song for Leah is that it takes it a step further, because it's one thing to say like abstractly, oh yeah, I'm going to be happy forever. Like, but you're really delving into like, what is happiness in A Song for Leah? And when you think about being in love, like the absolute bliss of say being in love, or like the absolute bliss of like looking down on your child as you're feeding him or something, and that like feeling you have in your heart of like, oh God, like this overwhelming like bliss that you have, of whatever, lying in bed on a Sunday all day with a lover or something, like those feelings day to day, sometimes we forget about how intense they are. And Song for Leah, it really explores how intense the love between Rob and Lyanna is, because they're both psychics, they're both telepaths. So it's not even regular love. They like read each other's minds. They're connected on this like fundamental level that's so strong. And she leaves him for the Grishka. which is the stand-in for heaven and everything. And she's so happy being in love with a billion people forever, and how he does not choose to join her, and the reasons he has for not choosing to join her. And so it's really it's a fascinating. I mean, it's a great expansion of that thought experiment of walking into and it's just beautiful. You feel the heartbreak, you feel the love, you get into the religion of it. Like what do we seek? What do we seek in afterlife? Or do we seek afterlife at all? That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, and I think for me, this is one of the stories that I just needed to be longer. I felt like her change of heart was very sudden, and I wanted more of the philosophical reasons that she would make those decisions. But yeah, the thematic element of it was my favorite part. I guess it was for me an execution thing. I was like, well, I need more from these characters. Like, why do they think what they think? And why are they making these decisions? And maybe that's my own thing, because like, I don't want to walk in a box and be happy forever. Like that is not something that sounds enjoyable to me at all.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
like I can't think about, like, I can't see that. And so maybe it's also, again, my own thing about like Laya's decision. I'm like, where I wanted to understand her thought process. It's so foreign to me. I couldn't maybe get there. Maybe that's my own fault.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's the question that the agnostic or atheist or doubter would ask the religious, is that, because the things are, I mean, at least, Christianity is marked as love, oh, you're being loved by God, you're being loved by Jesus, and you'll be with him, and you'll be with all of your friends and family forever. Once I was,
but Christianity is also marked as trial, that sacrifice and trial, and those things bring happiness and worth. So the idea of walking into a box and being happy forever without trial or sacrifice, which is like a key tenet of Christianity, could technically be saying that it's not that at all, and that giving it up is not the Christian experience in some ways. Sure.
I mean, I think he's talking about like post-death, what it's supposed to be like. The meek shall inherit the earth in heaven. Mm-hmm. Once I was at a market, and I was in Tanzania, and I remember this woman was trying to sell me various things, and she had a bunch of Christian paraphernalia, and she was trying to sell me a crafted wood carved cross, and I was like, oh no thanks, I'm not very religious. And she goes oh, no, you must like accept Jesus like right here and now. You don't understand. When that way when you die, you'll be in heaven, and we will all be singing all day. It'll be like church. I mean, the funny thing is that she described...
You were like, that's not the box I want to walk into. Is that what you were thinking?
Church in Tanzania was like 3 or 4 hours of people singing. And it was like the happiest part of her week. And I understand, like things, she truly loved it. And that was what she thought, heaven was like singing forever, So
wasn't that in Song for Laya? Wasn't there like singing, or am I confusing it with another story?
Singing, yeah.
Okay, I was like, isn't that in it? Okay, yeah. It's like a direct parallel.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, but the thing is, even when we do that thought experiment, like when we say, oh yeah, I'll be happy forever. Well, what do you mean happy? So what do you mean happy? But I think it's just, that being it. But I do admit you're right that like they do say that they're really in love, but do we really explore the love of Liana and Rob very much? We certainly explore his feeling of loss and his feeling of sadness, but I don't know if we really explore their feeling of love so much.
Yeah, so and in fairness, like it's a short story. It's just one of his short stories that I felt like actually could have been like a short novel. There was enough there to explore that I wish I had more of it.
Yeah. But it's a famous one.
I know, and I get it. Like I read it and I got it. It didn't hit me as hard as some of the other ones. I want to talk briefly. How did you feel about Portraits of His Children? So Portraits of His Children is my second place. Didn't hit either of your lists, so I'm wondering, is it in the middle for you or?
Yeah, it's in the middle. I appreciate the story. I sort of understand. George has said it a few times that like the characters that he writes and the books that he writes are his children. I think that's I think it's a comment of someone who has no children that doesn't you can't possibly understand what children are like. But like that's my one thing. Like, no, I don't think you can. Like having children is something else. It's something that you cannot really describe with a metaphor like you're writing. But it's still an interesting exploration where, and I enjoy the twist because you're beginning with this character who is saying that I'm not a story like all these other stories, and then by the end you're like, oh, actually she was a story too. Mm-hmm. But the fact that when he takes his characters and gives them and causes pain on them, that he's actually like hurting them. He like hurts himself in like a fatherly sense. That when in the story he has his character raped, and it hurts him as if a father had made his daughter get raped, and he's saying that about his characters. When he gives Tyrion hardship, he's hurt. When he kills Robb or Catelyn, like he's hurt himself because these were his children. I think it's a very beautifully written story, and he does explore this idea of characters being his children or being part of him later on. I mean, it's the same with it's the same theme in Pear-Shaped Man, where it's one of your least favorite, probably because of the body horror kind of aspect to it. But it's the same theme of like, this is a character he's creating that's part of him that it hurt when he does something to that person, he does something to himself, and it's where his consciousness ends and this other person's consciousness begins, like gets confusing, right?
Yeah, that's interesting because I that's totally true, because like the part of it that his writing is his children is a huge part of Portraits of His Children, but the part that really struck me was more about who has the right to tell stories. Because okay, here guys, I'm going to spoil Portraits of His Children, so I'm sorry. I feel like I can't talk about this without spoiling. If you don't want it to be spoiled,
I mean, the premise spoils it. Yeah,
skip ahead 3 minutes or whatever. But you find out that him and his daughter used to be very, very close, and now they're hugely estranged. And it's because his daughter shared a very personal experience with him, this horrible experience of being sexually assaulted. And they were brought closer in that experience, but then he turned around and wrote a story about her experience. And that estranged them because she says it wasn't your story to tell. And the whole exploration, and everyone knew it was her, basically. Like everyone knew that story was actually me. And now all of this horrible trauma I experienced, you gave to the world, and I had trusted you. And the story ended up being kind of a push and pull of like, well, you burdened me with that story and I needed to release it the way I knew how. And also it being like, but this was a real thing that happened to a real person in your life. And it really struck me because he wrote it quite early in his career. I think he wrote it in the 70s. Wasn't it?
No,
or am I making that up?
Children is oddly late. I think, is Portrait of Children 85?
Oh, maybe it is in the 80s.
Yeah, I think it's unusual in that it's actually like one of the later stories.
Later, but he wrote it a long time before A Song of Ice and Fire. And when I first read A Game of Thrones, I don't know if you knew why I didn't read A Song of Ice and Fire for so long.
Well, I thought you just thought it would be violent, and you especially don't like violence to get like the descriptions of violence and violence against women and things like that.
Yeah, so like sexual violence. I was really concerned, and it's not necessarily just like, it's graphic descriptions and also like unnecessary. I feel like particularly in our old sci-fi and fantasy, it's a trope that was overused in a way not very carefully. And so when I finally read A Song of Ice and Fire, I realized that was something the show perpetrated, I think, or perpetuated, and really isn't found in A Song of Ice and Fire. But there's a few things in the way he treats sexual assault that like wasn't my favorite, but ultimately, they were small enough that it didn't matter. But seeing that he thought so deeply about that situation much earlier in his career, and how he really explored like who has the right to tell those kinds of stories and
Hmm.
what is the meaning of why we tell those stories, really changed my perspective on maybe why he's chosen to include some of that stuff in A Song of Ice and Fire. Whether or not, like, it doesn't change whether or not it's done perfectly or not. I think there were ways he could have still done it better. But knowing that early in his career, he was still thinking about like the intensity of those things and why or why not you would include them in your writing really
Yeah.
struck me as so deeply thoughtful. And, in the end, I view the main character as a villain. He did not make the right choice, but I still understand why he made the choice he did. And that is so fascinating to me about that short story.
The And then, I mean, isn't there also some ambiguity in the end of the story if she was actually even a real person?
Oh,
Like,
I assumed she was real. I did not get that ambiguity at all. So that's so interesting because that
no,
would
that's the
change the
thing. Is
meaning
like
quite a bit.
she protests the entire story, and then is like, I'm not one of your stories, and then let me I maybe
Wait, but I
getting
mean,
it
like that
wrong.
would totally be so fascinating if I like just completely missed.
No, 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 no. You're led that way, and then um so it's ambiguous here. I'm sorry. He purposely writes it ambiguous. He says he says, Cantling stepped back, folded his arms, studied the four portraits. Such excellent work looking at the paintings. He could almost feel their presence in the house. Donahue, his firstborn, the boy he wished he'd been. Sissy, his true love. Barry Layton, his wise and tired alter ego. Nicole, the daughter he never had. His people, his characters, his children. Because it's her name's
Oh, okay. That's such an interesting read because I read it as he gave up the relationship with his real daughter to only have a relationship with the daughter he wrote. But now you saying that it's ambiguous, you're right. It could be that she never existed. I
it
never
never existed. But I, the story reminds me of this like horrible. So I was a huge Buffy and Angel fan, like back in the day. And when Buffy was on, there was this horrible, horrible internet debate that would pop up in chat rooms, and it was should Buffy be raped?
Oh my gosh, I
And
know about this.
yeah, and people would write, don't you think like it would be a really good story and it would give her some trauma to like fight against, and it would like illustrate the problems, and people would be like, what the fuck? And the response would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you're like, stop this shit. Like, no, like what? And so and it was probably a troll debate that was constantly happening, okay? But every writer like has to make that decision, right? Like,
Well, and that's exactly it. Is like there's just so much writing that I have read that is like literally that in writing form, which is like, well, my female character didn't have trauma, and so I needed to write that in. And that was my perception of what A Song of Ice and Fire was going to be because the show seemed to treat it that way. Whereas A Song
right,
of Ice and Fire really doesn't. Like anytime it's included, there is a point. Like it always has a point. And that's
right.
why
It's
I
not
love
just
Portraits of
there to
His
be
Children for
snuffed.
that reason,
Yeah, it's
but
not.
not everybody. I mean, I have read stories that literally feel like that Buffy conversation, where it's like, I think they're serious. I don't think that was troll. I think some
I
people
guess,
really feel that way.
but it was just constant. It was like every month there'd be like something. You're like, oh no, this conversation again.
Wow.
Oh, but yeah,
Um,
no, it's a beautiful, difficult, interesting conversation. And you're right that you could talk about portraits of his children forever. Like just how real these characters are and the responsibilities of writers. Because I think he becomes really famous based on that story. Like that's
yes.
the one that like his breakout and stuff like that. It's
Well, and I think it's what he does best as well, which is I can see a lot of different arguments. There's no argument I think that's presented in the story as the right argument. Like I think you could argue on the side of both the daughter and the father in many ways,
yeah.
and not be wrong. Like which I love when there's stories like that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is like the great stories, the ones with George is when I think they're the multi-layered, when there's just so much in it, like that you can go back and read it 5 times and come up with 5 different readings. That's what.
Yeah, so that leads perfectly into what I told you a little bit before we started recording, which is like when I looked at your least favorites, I saw a trend of like, he doesn't like these because they're all thematically very shallow. Is that true? Is that the reason?
Yeah. I really just the one trick pony stories. I'm just like, So I on there, I think there's one called FTA, and it's about these scientists, and he thinks there's a conspiracy because no one's talking about hyperspace. They've invented hyperspace. And so he's like, in hyperspace, you're not bound by the speed of light. And they're like, and at the end of the story, they're like, yeah, you're not. But under hyperspace, it's actually slower.
I loved it. Before we go into that, I wanted to just real quick. So since we're not going to talk about all of them, your top 5 favorite short stories were The Glass Flower, A Song for Laia, Sand Kings, Meat House Man, and The Pear-Shaped Man. And my favorites were Sand King's Portraits of His Children, Second Kind of Loneliness, which we had already talked about, When Morning Comes Mistfall, and For a Single Yesterday.
So much more to talk about. Oh my goodness.
I know. It's just like, it's like you could go for hours. Your least favorites, all are thematically shallow. My least favorites are like pretty much 4 out of 5 are just body horror. So
Meat House Man is on one of your least favorite, right?
Yes, both Meat House Man and Pear-Shaped Man, which are 2 of your favorites, are on my least favorite list. So we will for sure talk about those. Real quick about FTA.
I still remember the first time I read Meat House Man and where I was. It was such a
Me too, but for bad reasons.
Yeah, but it was such a punch in the gut where I'm just like,
Well, let's talk about FTA real quick. FTA isn't like one of my favorites, but it is a flash fiction, and so I feel like a lot of people don't like it. It's like 2 pages. I really liked it. I loved the bomb that dropped at the end. Like, but it is what we couldn't talk about it for very long. Do you know what I mean? It kind of is what it is. So, like,
I spoiled it. Now there's no reason to read it.
There is. It's like 2 pages, guys. Read it. So yeah, tell me about Meat House Man. I will say this: it's on my least favorites, but for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
And it actually doesn't surprise me at all that it would be on people's favorites. Like, thematically, it's very rich.
When I met George R. Martin, there was a young woman there, and she was like 22 years old. And he's like, he's like, you like my writing? Well, what do you like? And she's like, my favorite story is Meat House Man. And George goes, wow, you're really fucked up. But I've heard him say that a lot. People are like, who's your favorite character? Theon. And he goes, yeah, you're fucked up. But like,
I mean, is there anyone you can really like and not have that response in his writing?
My favorite character is Davos. Oh, okay. So
Brienne. My favorite character is Brienne. I feel like you're safe.
The only morally pure, maybe John, Meat House Man. So what's funny about Meat House Man is, George wrote 3 stories that take place in something called the Corpse Handler universe, where in this universe, for labor, brainless human beings, people have their brains removed and they put in machines to puppet them around, and then people can telepathically control them. So somebody can be telepathically controlling 5 guys at a dock, and it's more efficient than having 1 guy at a dock, and they can do dangerous things. So this is the universe. So it begins with this guy going to a prostitution den, and he has sex with a corpse. And the corpse is just rocking his world. And he's thinking the whole time that, man, the corpse handler, it must be just an expert. And so he's just like really appreciating this corpse handler. And then he finishes, and his friends are like, what? You thought you were with a corpse handler? No, dude. Those corpses tap into your subconscious. You were fucking yourself. And he's so embarrassed and grossed out by it. Not the corpse fucking part, but like but the fact that he was masturbating essentially. That he swears off corpses. And so then he tries to have a real relationship. And for the rest of the story, and it's quite a long story, like it gets into two women that he dates. And they're one of them is clearly based on Lisa Tuttle, and the other is clearly based on this woman that left George for his best friend. This happened to him in the mid-70s. And then at the end of the story, he is now back as a corpse handler, controlling corpses in gladiator battles, which is a metaphor for him becoming a writer. Like, people came here to see the spectacle I can create, okay. But then he goes back and he's with his girlfriend and his new girlfriend, and he's talking to his girlfriend. And then in the end, you realize that the girlfriend is a corpse. And it's just such a boom, like punch to the gut, like, oh God. And yeah, brutal, disgusting, very uncomfortable story. But at the same time, there's an interesting statement being made about love and the need to find someone that you think is your intellectual equal in the relationship. Because at the end, you're like, oh God, what a lonely, pathetic piece of shit. But anybody that has like a trophy wife or a submissive partner or whoever is that, right? You're not really finding love. Like, the universe is scary and we're all, it's horrible. And the only thing that gets us through it is the fact that like we can find a partner to share life with, that we can connect with. Like, that's one of the great things about life. And it goes to show that like, how can you have that connection with someone that you don't respect or don't think is your equal, if you think it's just somebody that you're going to command around? And so I think there's a very interesting statement about, even though the protagonist in the story, like, obviously doesn't get there, that like, yes, it's lonely and hard, and dating is hard, and being in a relationship is hard, but it's the only way to not be lonely in this universe is to find a real person that's your equal, that you connect with, rather than essentially having somebody that you can, a submissive partner who you can control around, which he is equating with masturbation in the end.
I think that's how it played out, but like, that theme was definitely my favorite part of the story. Like, I loved the theme of that. When you read it, like, the real relationships he had, like, from a normal person, were clearly better than this corpse relationship that was with himself. But that he could not see that because he could not, or was unwilling to be emotionally vulnerable over and over again. And I think there was a lot of interesting to say, like, yeah, it is gutting if you're emotionally vulnerable over and over again and get denied. Like, if you give that vulnerability and then it sucks.
There must be so many people out there. We see those people out there that either that get hurt and they never go dating again, or they choose a partner that is not really a partner.
Or they choose bitterness. I mean, I think a lot, like, we throw this word around a ton, so I don't love the word, but like, if you think of the real incel community and not what the internet has made them, like, a lot of times it's scary because it's scary for women. I'm not saying it's not. It's also deeply sad to me because I see a lot of the pain behind what often leads people to that. And it reminded me of that story. Like, this is like, it's pain masquerading as anger and bitterness and whatever. So I loved that part too. Like, I'm with you there. It was just, the execution of it was so horrific for me that like immediately it has to be like in the bottom. Like, it's just like, that's, I just have to speak it.
I mean, yeah, all of that. I can't deny anything you're saying. Like, it's just, I agree with you 100%. It's the most disgusting setting that you can possibly imagine. It's so creepy.
And so it's like, it's one of those, like, I say I dislike, but it's like, it's not because it shouldn't be written. I think people should be able to write these disgusting, horrible, uncomfortable things. I just don't necessarily always need to read them.
Yeah. But I guess I needed to be in that discussion because, but it's funny because in the end, like where I'm just like, wow, like, like is it as disgusting as that universe to yeah, be in a relationship where you're just like bossing somebody around like they're a walking corpse. I think it was like that like statement, like, oh God, like this is nothing more than when you're doing that, it's nothing more than masturbation. It's nothing more than like yourself. When
And
when
not
when
even that, but like even beyond the sexual part of it, it's intellectually too. Like you
yeah,
literally are just hearing your own thoughts. You're literally just seeing
yes,
yourself reflected back. And what does that mean for you as a person?
yes. Like imagine like living that stereotypical 1950s like idea of like coming home and somebody just puts the dinner in front of you and is like, "Oh, hello, sweetie," mwah, and you just sit there. What conversations are you having? Are you talking about your hopes and fears and what happened that was horrible today, and like what you're scared of and what you hope and all the vulnerability that goes into a real relationship that you can share with somebody else if you're just the other person isn't um,
Yourself.
engaging you isn't a yeah, the other person's yourself, like trapped in this trapped talking to yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, so I
I feel like
understand.
I get it.
I
I
understand.
totally get it.
I
Like I
get it. Like
do.
that's the thing is
Now
we
the
understand the other position. It's
I
just
understand it. Now the pear-shaped man I understand less
mm,
because that's just horrifying. And this actually might be just me because this story is about a girl lives above a guy who really makes her uncomfortable
yes.
and no one believes her. So maybe this was just me being like, I'm so done with the gaslighting. Like we've all been there that like maybe it was someone told me that they think I felt it was too close to home and that's why I hate
That's
it.
probably yeah. Because that's the thing is she's such a beautifully written protagonist in that she's just a little bit unlikable and
Uh-huh.
then nobody believes her and you're kind of not believing her at first and you're like this is just
Oh,
some
I believed her.
crazy shrill woman and that like that's the
No,
problem.
I
Yeah.
believed her. See, that's the thing because
Oh, you believe? Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
100%. Because you get invalidated as a woman so much for your
Mhm.
instincts, but ultimately they are almost always right. Like how many times I have just been treated terrible and I knew immediately like this person, but you can't tell anyone. You have to
Yeah,
trust your gut. So I mean, I agree with you that she's kind of unlikable because she
yeah,
is judgmental, but like I 100% knew she was
yeah,
right the whole time,
yeah.
which I think is a very good, interesting experience of just like the male versus female experience. It's kind of like I was involved in like a self-defense class recently and the guy was like, "Yeah, you shouldn't ever be on your phone at night in a parking garage." And all the women are like, "We would never." And the men were like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, "Never. Your keys in your hand, you've
Yeah.
got some anytime you're in a spot, you're always thinking that." And so like I love when I get to hear like different thoughts. So hearing that you read that and you were like, should I believe her is such an interesting thing because
Mhm.
like immediately I was on her side.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a dark tale because it gets into the misogyny. Because like you don't because you can read it as one like not believing her with the assault aspect of it, or it can be about mental health and
Mm-hmm.
how like over time like people just don't want to engage with her anymore, and in the end she becomes the pear shaped man because
That part is so weird. I like
yeah. So I mean, obviously the pear shaped man is George. He looks just like George, right? But like,
no, George is not the pear-shaped man. Let people be overweight. It doesn't have to be George. There's just overweight people in the world.
but it's like, does she become the pear shaped man in that her people stop wanting to engage with her and they start ignoring her and they leave her alone until she becomes a recluse like the pear shaped man, or no one believes her about this assault and then she ends up getting assaulted. But it is about like what we do to people, how we ignore them until peril happens to them. I like this the layers of it but also there's also the third layer of like, if George R. Martin is a writer, where does the writer end and the character begin and things like this. But I also thought my favorite part of Pear-Shaped Man is the writing at the end, because he does this beautiful thing. Like I say, George is obsessed with blended consciousness, where one person begins and another person ends. And the quote I had at the end, where he says, they were against her, looking at their they were all against her, she knew, looking at their faces. She clutched her briefcase to his chest. Like, I love, like, just that line. It's so simple. She clutched her briefcase to his chest. They'd taken her things. He couldn't remember exactly what. You're like, oh.
Yeah, like you said, it's that ambiguous ending where you're like, did they really become one? Is she just like him now and an outcast?
He was hungry, she realized. Like, oh. Like,
that I admit that was a very cool part.
Yeah. Okay. But that's all with Pear-Shaped Man.
Yeah, the Meat House Man is easier for me to understand. The Pear-Shaped Man, like, I just had such a visceral reaction to. And like, again, I had a friend say like, that's because of my own experiences. And then maybe that is true. So maybe I'll come around on it. Like, I could see me reading it again. And once I'm divorced from the shock of how horrifying it is, like maybe I'll be able to leave that aside.
It makes me understand why you don't like Monkey Treatment. Because Monkey Treatment is essentially that story without any of the deepness.
Well, yeah, Monkey Treatment is camp. It's fine, because like that's how I feel like. See, this is why I want to talk about Closing Time, because I get why you don't like it, because there's like not a theme to be found. But to me, Closing Time is camp. I love like it's total camp, and I'm gonna spoil it so people don't want to know. But like,
please,
he gets this coin and he thinks it's gonna turn him into an eagle or a bird of some sort.
Yeah, something like that.
And it turns him into a rabbit. And he's like, I had the worst night of my life. And they're trying to figure out, well, why did it turn this one person into an eagle and you into a rabbit? And they realize you get turned into whatever car you own. So like he owned a Volkswagen Rabbit or something. And the other person owned a Falcon or whatever. And at the end, they're like, oh no, he's giving it to his wife. What's his wife going to turn into? And it's a supernova is her car. And then the world ends. I'm sorry, that is camp. That is high camp. And I am so here for it. George has written nothing like that. Everything always has some sort of theme. This was just like... pure silly.
You're saying it's just downright silly and fun. And so
it is.
Yeah. Okay, I can understand that.
Like, it's not in my top 5 because I want a theme, but like I rated it highly because it's just like, you could not have paid me to predict that the ending was literally not going to be some thematic element. It was literally like the world ends because her car is a supernova.
Yeah. I get it, but I think also I was put in a bad mood because, and this is just me, I don't like when somebody speaks differently and the writer has to spell out the word. I'm saying like taking like when it's ain't but to an extreme, you know, when because I find as a reader you're spending more time like differentiating like what they're actually saying than it takes you out of the story. It's why a lot of people don't like Star Lady, because Star Lady is even though Star Lady is a really cool tale, Harry Howell speaks with this, you know,
it's weird
mouth kind of speech the whole time. And so George has a lot of these stories of going to a bar and like working class people at a bar. Is like this comes up all over the place.
It does, actually. I never connected. The minute you said that, I was like, I can think of like 5 stories where people are at a bar off the top of my head.
Right. Stone City, nobody leaves to Pittsburgh. Like, it's just, it's, So I think I was already in a bad mood being like, oh, another one of these like
I get it.
Working class people at a bar mumbling words, and then it's a supernova.
My question to you is, do you have a car that would what would your car turn you into?
I guess I have a Highlander right now.
Oh, so of course.
Here we are. I live in the Dominican Republic, so I need something to go over all the potholes and curbs. So
I was just, I think it deserves. I'm not saying it doesn't deserve to be there. I'm just saying it's camp, and I get it. You know, your other ones like Nobody Leaves New Pittsburgh. I totally agree with you. That was the most nothing story I've ever read. you get to the end of it and you're just like, okay, well,
Yeah, I
they're
mean,
also in a bar there,
you get
aren't
into
they?
George's psyche about like how he feels about Bayonne, New Jersey, and like his past and things like that. Into like George has this weird love hate relationship with the um, the working class people that he grew up with. On the one hand, he like sympathizes with their situation and lack of economic mobility, but at the same time, he also is frustrated and angry about their lack of motivation and their willingness to just be like, this is my life, you know. And a lot of his stories like focus on that frustration because he is a
Yeah, and they're
pick
only
yourself up
ever
by the
okay
bootstraps guy. Yeah.
for the most part, I feel like, because the other story I thought did that too. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Let me look. Was it Closing Time?
Mm.
No, we just talked about
The
Closing Time.
closing
Sorry.
time was
I
was
meant what? No, we just talked about that. It's not that one. There's one where like it's like, oh, the Night Shift. I'm thinking the Night Shift.
oh
That's what I was
yeah.
thinking of. Like the Night Shift deals with that, I feel like.
Mhm.
Um the Men of Greywater Station in some ways deals with that.
Yeah, Stone City, the middle of Stone City before he goes
Stone
underneath.
City.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a lot of nothing. I could make a case for the last Super Bowl. I think there's some very interesting things about AI there, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, you do have to. I get it. You have to listen to a lot of football talk.
Yeah, and him describing this game that I supposed to think is interesting. Keep in
I
mind,
think
like
thematically there's stuff there, but like I understand. I
a
understand why it's
lot
on
of
your
it,
list.
a lot of it was from a different time. So he was a journalism major and got a master's degree in journalism, and then
Yeah.
he didn't get into journalism, and then he taught journalism, even though he'd never really been in it.
Well,
But
that's common.
yeah, yeah. So a lot of his stories, like Armageddon Rag, is about journalists, right?
Writers
Yeah,
like to write about other writers.
yeah. Just like actors, I mean, Hollywood likes to make movies about actors a lot.
100%.
Or
YouTubers like to make videos about YouTubing. I mean,
YouTubers,
it
you're
is, it's
right.
literally an epidemic.
Theater, the chorus line, theater likes to have theater about theater. Like it's just, um, so what was I saying? The oh about his journalism. He I lost my train of thought. I'm so
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
But he
It was my fault.
oh, there was a time where newspapers were largely surviving on their sports section. Keep in mind that like back in the day, like you could see your local team, but sometimes on the radio or TV. But to find out what was happening in the other baseball games, football games, you would have to read the newspaper, and they would
Well,
have
he wrote as like a local sports journalist for a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so and so it tended to be that the best writers were in the newspaper were the sports writers because they had to take some game that's been played a million times and make it seem interesting and use all sorts of metaphors and different words to describe balls being flung around the field. Okay, there was a special art to sports writing, and the sports writing was the prime driver of newspaper sales. Like it was the thing people bought the newspaper for because that's how you found it. Now you can watch all the games, you can have ESPN, you have all this stuff. But and so I get it, like why he wrote this story, and in a different time, like it would be a demonstration of his ability to write a sports story. But it's no longer that time.
Yeah, and I think you're right about when it was written. I think now it's very interesting because I think it is evergreen in some ways because I do think there's a lot of conversations to be had about real versus fake and online versus the real thing.
Yeah,
That's becoming more and more prevalent, like right now. But like
it's
I
also
wasn't surprised.
it's ironically evergreen as well as he's talking about the last Super Bowl as in something that is times moved on and this no longer exists.
And it listed a time that is in the past of
Right.
now.
But also he's writing it. He's writing the sports story is also something that is gone. Like what's funny is that he's writing about the Super Bowl, but it actually happened to the sports story. that he's
Mm.
that like so it ironically has become evergreen.
Yeah, in a lot
Um,
of ways.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's the problem is we could talk about a million things. Like we didn't talk about In the House of the Worm, which is something I see a lot of people love, but so I was surprised to see that it didn't make either of our top stories. Like it's kind
Mm.
of
It
funny
also
how
has some
like
body horror.
yeah,
That's a
well,
gross story.
I was okay with that one. I there was enough thematic element to pull me out of it, but
Okay.
we could talk for hours about his work. I'm so grateful that you even took 2 hours to come and talk about it. I'm
It's
sure it
always fun. Thank you for talking to me for 2 hours. Yeah.
won't be our last. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure we'll talk about these again. And as our final question, what did you think of the Knights of the Seven Kingdoms TV show? Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a really great show. I rank it as, first season of Game of Thrones, second season of Game of Thrones, third season of Game of Thrones, and then I would put the Seven Kingdoms. I think it's really, really a really good show, really fun. I would argue that it's not thematically on, like it doesn't hit the same thematic notes as the short story. Surprisingly, like it doesn't really focus on the class conflict that is so big with Dunk in the
They
short story.
shift the class conflict. They shift it in between. Um, oh my gosh, Stag. My brain is dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Bar Baratheon. Oh my gosh, I
Oh yeah.
cannot prove that word. Just like what's not coming. Baratheon and Dunk versus Dunk and the Everydayman. They didn't have any of the scenes of the Everydayman really.
Right, and I understand he can't get in his head and him counting the costs of everything and stuff like that. But so I kind of say like it's more akin to a movie like Rudy or Rocky than it is to the short story. But Rudy and Rocky are those are good stories. So, I mean, like,
Yeah, I mean, I rarely does an adaptation beat the original work for me because I'm a more of a reader than a watcher. But I also enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid show, and if it gets more people into it, then uh, it's a good thing. But
yeah, it was cute.
it was cute. Oh my gosh, it was cute. That's a perfect note to end on. Everybody, tell us your thoughts in the comments. You can give us your favorite or least favorite of George's short stories. Tell us what thoughts of ours were cute and which were not. And Preston, thank you for joining. And we'll see you all next time. Bye.